This is the final assignment for AEP 855, submitted by Bridget King. It is the assignment on race, class, access, gender, and equity. The first article I chose to review is titled A Diversity Toolkit, Race and Ethnicity. This comes from NEA Today. I do like to read articles and choose articles from NEA Today. It contains up-to-date data, information, articles on educational issues. It's peer-reviewed, it's research-based. There were two reasons that I chose this article. One was because it was research-based and it's from a reliable resource. Secondly, race and ethnicity are relevant issues in today's educational communities, so I felt like that this would be an important issue to address. Okay, one thing that stood out to me in this article was that there's actually a separation of race and ethnicity, that there is a separate definition for each. Race is actually defined as something specific, like Asian, black, white. It says that many scholars have noted that race is not a biological category, but an idea, a social construction that people use to interpret human differences. Ethnicity is defined as a grouping of people based on geographical region. So I believe it's important to make sure we know the separation between these two as we continue on with this summary. The article also pointed out that schools often either consciously or unconsciously will engage in some kind of racial bias decision making on academic data, like on assessments or in curriculum planning. Some strategies that were suggested to address this were to learn more about the social construction of race and racism, to reflect on your own racial identity and how it has shaped your experiences. I've read different comments from classmates that their upbringing has so shaped their belief, so we need to make sure that these beliefs aren't causing some kind of bias in some way. And also, one strategy is to create a meaningful blueprint that includes sustained inquiry, examining challenges, a plan to meet the needs of colleagues and students as they explore the emotional territory of race. Some leadership challenges in addressing race and ethnicity. Again, one of the reasons I chose this article was because it supplied some very good strategies itself for leaders to address issues more effectively. Also, Northhouse in Chapter 13 addressed changes in the American family since the 1950s. Just families have changed dynamically, the structure of families, the dynamics of families. And so this isn't only race and ethnicity, but family dynamics, so they're all intermingled together. Gender biases in leadership roles are also a factor in addressing race and ethnicity. This was addressed in Chapter 14 in the Northhouse book. Male leaders tend to address these issues differently than female leaders. And I believe I stated earlier in one of the discussion topics, several group members implied that their families help them shape their beliefs and what they feel so strongly about in education today. So it does go to show you that we do have to consider the culture that our students are growing up in and what's shaping their beliefs and values. Some closing comments on Article 1. My interest area is a leadership role in special education. I believe that using this information from this article certainly plays a role in biases when making decisions. When you're qualifying a student for special education, are we qualifying them because of their race, because of their ethnicity, or because it's actually an educational need? So I think we need to be very aware of what biases are, and that race and ethnicity is clearly defined, and that we're considering that when we're making these types of decisions. On to Article 2. This is a completely different article than the first one. It specifically addresses meeting the needs of early childhood. The title of the article is Meeting the Needs of Multiracial and Multi-Ethnic Children. It was pulled from Early Childhood News, the professional resource for teachers and parents. My goal for choosing this source was to address the early childhood part of race and ethnicity. I believe that it's really, really important that we address this as early on in education as we can. not just in elementary and the high school years. There's a quote from this article that I felt like explained all the areas that early childhood is trying to reach. The quote was that multicultural education, anti-bias programs, gender sensitivity, response to welfare reform, and provisions for the needs of homeless children and children with terminal diseases are examples of response to diversity. So not only are we dealing with, race and ethnicity, we have all these other factors that we're having to look at in children, beginning in early childhood, at 3 years old and on. So the big question rises, how do you teach a child that is a mixture of ethnicities? A central reason for this multiple a central reason for the need of multicultural education does result from the initial need for racial diversity, gender equity, and access for children with disabilities in the early childhood classroom. Second, many believe that children with a mixed heritage don't constitute a distinct cultural group, so they don't treat them separately, and I believe that this belief needs to be changed. Early childhood educators also need to find ways to support healthy multiracial and multi-ethnic identity development. We need to develop programs. We need to find resources. We need to work very closely with interracial and interethnic parents in addition to meet their needs, just as much as we do other ethnic groups. So going back to the question, how do you teach the child that is a mixture of ethnicities? Let's address that. The first step would be staff training. We need to include this in some of the training that we're already doing. A second step would be to address the curriculum. The third step would be to learning to respond to bias. Children at a very, very early age often learn to be biased. So we need to take a proactive approach as educators and educational leaders so that we can change this thinking. In closing, one positive aspect of the psychodynamic approach listed in the Northhouse book to leadership is that this is used to encourage leaders and followers to become aware of their own personality types and the personality types of those that they work. So it kind of just forces everybody to work together. It's also imperative that a leader in today's educational system is flexible, that we are aware of others in our environment. It's only then that we're going to better meet the needs of the students. If we're aware of others and ourselves and our own beliefs and biases, it's only then that we're going to be able to truly meet the needs of the students. And also, going back to reflecting on comments from posts in this course, I've heard many classmates say that they have a desire to be effective and compassionate. And I think that's so important as a leader in today's education, is to be compassionate, to be effective. I believe it's a key ingredient, and it's going to make a successful leader.